Welcome to Psych for Psychology, a Nystrom & Associates podcast. Our host, Brett Cushing, is a licensed marriage and family therapist at Nystrom. Each week, he talks about all things mental health and therapy with guests, and you get a chance to dive into specific psychology topics that help promote personal development and wellness. And now, your host, Brett.
Welcome to Psych for Psychology. I am here with Brett Cushing, LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapist. If you don't remember the letters, it's LMNOP. Just remember that for the license. I'm Christa Overson. I'm also an LMNOP/licensed marriage and family therapist. And we're here with Isaac Hatch-Gillette.
Mouthful.
Yes, but I got through it.
AKA the mental health hipster.
Yes, the mental health hipster is back in the building, ladies and gentlemen. He's got the mustache. He's ready.
He's going with the Freddie Mercury
He's
look.
wearing sunglasses right now. Just kidding. He's actually not.
Like
He's not.
your range. Like,
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
Demand.
Now he's wearing sunglasses. He's way too cool to be here. But we are back. We're going to talk about a couple different things today. We're following up because the last time that Isaac was here, we were talking about group therapy. We were talking about what is it, why does it work, what's it all about, and Isaac recently started a group out of the Apple Valley Clinic, and so we're kind of just curious like how it's going and kind of what he's learning. So,
and probably going to be talking about the dynamics of that group and what we were talking about it already, and some of the dynamics we were kind of affirming. It is hard,
yes,
to have this group, this artificial kind of community amongst strangers, and then start talking about really deep things because we aren't accustomed to that. So we might be delving into feelings too, and why do we talk? Why are we so hung up on feelings anyway as therapists? Like, why is that, and why is that important to our mental health? So so hang in with us here as we kind of get into all of this topic.
Yeah.
It's going to be a wild ride.
It's going to be a wild ride. Lots of twists and turns, ups and downs.
Lots of emotions, lots of feelings.
I might start crying.
Yeah.
Well, we were hoping you would start singing, you know.
Yes, well, that's bonus content afterwards.
Ooh, is that a promise?
Well, I don't know. Maybe someday we'll have like subscribers and that they can access like there's a tier of subscriber, you know, and the top tier, like they get bonus content. I don't know. I'm thinking
I love that.
Real far ahead here.
Let's try it today.
We might have to pay them to hear us
maybe
sing.
you could,
well, Isaac plays guitar, you guys. So,
and you sing.
I sing. Brett,
and
what
I
would
listen
you like
to music sometimes.
Okay.
So
do you play
play
like
the spoons?
Yeah, spoons or the triangle.
I drum a lot on like tables.
Okay,
so,
that counts.
Yeah, that does not count. But
well,
at any rate,
we're trying to do a Psych for Psychology band. That's the next thing. But first, group therapy.
First, speaking of group therapy.
First, okay, so
how's your
how's
group
the
going?
It's going well. We're starting to build a little bit of cohesion, but to the point of feelings, it's been a bit of a challenge. People are more guarded and trepidatious. Even 5 or 6 sessions in at this point, it's feeling a bit slow. And yeah, I think it's interesting how people do not want to talk about their feelings. I'm not entirely sure what's the dynamic that makes it different from individual therapy versus group, but yeah, there's a barrier there.
Well, and I find it too, even in individual therapy, it's hard for people to talk about feelings. Well, and how can I talk about something I have no idea what it is? And I think you were talking earlier, Isaac, how when people do talk about their feelings, what are they really sharing? You remember what you said? They're not telling us feelings.
Yeah, you ask about feelings and then they usually share a thought. How do you feel about that? Well, I think X, Y, and Z, right, is usually the response. And to slow down and be like, I'm sad.
Yes.
Right? Like, and identifying that emotion in your body.
Or I hear this one a lot. How do you feel? Well, I feel like. And then as soon as I hear like, I know anything after that is anything but a feeling. It's probably, like you're saying, it's a thought.
Yeah.
And so we're really out of touch with our feelings.
Well, I was even trying to think. I'm a I'm a visualizer. So like I was just thinking about, you know, the group of people. So you get this group together, you're all there in the room that you've reserved, and it's like time to do this thing that you've been working towards, right? Mm-hmm. To have this group. And I'm thinking about the people in it, and like the phones are put away. Mm-hmm. Right, we're behind closed doors, and like now we're face to face. I don't know. Do you sit in a circle?
Yes, I intentionally do not have any table or anything between us either. Like, you got to read all the body language. It's pretty vulnerable. I'm realizing like to not have a table between you, honestly.
Oh, right. The other day in a staff meeting, I took out our tables, and I was shocked at how some people responded, and they were like, why did you take the tables away? I wasn't really thinking about it, but just not having that barrier. And then I know for all of us, we go to our phones so much for just like to fill when we're waiting in line, or when we're, you know, there's a lull in the conversation, you know, so you've got this group of strangers, everything's put away, there's nothing there. I would imagine that would be a little like crickets, right? At least
just
at first.
Really artificial kind of environment.
Right.
And we say not a table in front of you. How about not a drink in hand either?
Exactly.
Consider like holidays, parties, work, parties, things like that. People, when we are with other people, we like some separation. So in a group, you feel very artificial, very exposed, very vulnerable.
Yep. Even a meal, like usually when we're gathering with a group, it's like, oh, well, there's at least a shared meal, or we're doing an activity, or there's, like you said, drinks or something like that. So.
Yeah. And there's a interesting study I heard a while ago where they had people watch like a really emotionally laden film. And these were all people that were on diets, so trying to restrict like sugar intake, what have you. And they had a bowl of M&Ms by each of these separate groups. In one group, they were told, let your emotions free, do what you want. And then in the other group, they were like, you have to try and restrict your emotions. And the group that had to restrict their emotions was consistently eating more and more M&Ms. Because the idea is that they were tapping cognitive resources to dampen their emotions, and then that made it more vulnerable. And it's a pretty elegant experiment. They just counted how many M&Ms they ate, right? And like,
totally.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that ties into the idea, like, okay, now I'm focused on another task. Maybe some of that is like letting us have things fall out a little bit easier.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and sugar has an analgesic effect. I don't know if that's the right word, but like, that's what Tylenol is, an analgesic. Like it's a pain reduction component. So sugar has like pain relief implications. Yeah. So I could see people being like, this is really uncomfortable to suppress or to like, because the people that ate more M&Ms were the ones who were keeping their emotions in. So they were probably like, well, this is a way of dealing with this.
And isn't that what we do just in general? I think when we're at a social event, we're at a party, we don't know what to do. And people don't know how to make small talk. I was just hanging out with my daughter yesterday. We just went and had some ice cream, and we were talking, about this. Like, we both prefer like this, one or two other people, because you can have a good conversation. And it's just hard to be in a big group of people. It's loud. It's hard to get deeper with people, have a substantive kind of conversation. And so what do I talk about for just this little bit of time? And I think we deal with that. Well, it's eating M&Ms, having a drink or two, some people 3 or 4 or something, because we're trying to numb our discomfort with the anxiety, the vulnerability. Whether it's in group, whether it's an individual. So
go ahead. Pretty routinely, like people that come to my office with some sort of like substance use concerns, talking about how like it's the only way they feel like they can get access to their feelings and share comfortably, right? So like people are kind of starving for this sort of dialogue to a degree, but we need our inhibitions lowered by a chemical to step into it, right?
Right. Another question I was wondering is, when you were kind of prepping the people in the group for this group, was the understanding kind of like, you can share if you want to, but you're under no obligation to, or did you not even give that much like direction, I guess?
Yeah, and I even prefaced that when I kind of probe a little bit more on some deeper issues. Like, you're going to share to the degree that's comfortable, and noting like the confidentiality piece. I think we kind of touched on that last time, but these people aren't bound by law to keep what you're discussing private. Ideally, we all do, just by like a social contract.
Yep.
But I try to preface it with that. They don't have to.
Right. So it's not like people are coming in thinking, okay, I have to talk about, the traumas that have happened to me or my childhood. It's more just like, we're going to put people in a room together and see kind of what happens in a way, right? Right.
Yeah.
And we talked about Irvin Yalom last time. He's kind of like, is he the father of psychotherapy? I don't know. No, that's maybe Freud, father of psychotherapy.
Yeah.
Anyways, so Irvin Yalom is a huge name in psychotherapy and especially group therapy. But his whole thing is here and now experience. So basically, he's not one to try to direct a group and say like, okay, everyone, today our topic is blah, 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 right?
Right.
He's more like, see what happens, right? So that's that's the idea, right?
Yeah, and I think, it's the idea is that you want continuity between groups so that you can keep diving deeper and deeper.
Okay.
I'm finding it challenging to get to a place where we can have continuity because it feels like we're topic oriented. We sit and listen and try to address it, and pulling people in to try to get their reactions.
Yeah.
Is really hard. And I meet with these people individually, and afterwards they're like, this was my reaction to what that person said. I'm like, please share that in group.
Nice.
That's what we need, like when you're feeling something, even if it's a negative reaction to a comment someone said, we need to pull that to the surface because that's something we can work with. And then from there we can keep diving deeper and deeper and do some of the legwork. But
so I want to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Because I'm going on a limb here. I'm going to suggest that there might be some people listening saying, why in the world would I want to do this? So for instance, we were talking before we started today, and I was sharing how there are different levels of communication and different levels of intimacy. And the first one is bus stop communication. When you're at the bus stop, you talk about the weather with some stranger. And then the second one is kind of the daily grind where you and your partner, you and your kiddo, whatever, you just kind of just regurgitate the day. And those are the first two levels. Not very intimate, not very deep communication. The studies show that most people hang out at those two levels. When we start to get a little more intimate, we're talking about maybe our values, our opinions on things, and that's a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more intimate. Then there's another level of intimacy where we're actually sharing our emotions. I go from my opinions to my emotions, and I'm actually able to share and experience that emotion with somebody. And that is very vulnerable. That's very intimate. There's another level where it's talked about that you don't even need words at all. You just understand and you know somebody so well, you can just look at each other and you know.
Right, that body language piece.
Because you know each other so well. So I'm setting the table here because I think people, I'm just going on the defensive of people that are listening because they're saying, my whole life is bus stop and daily grind. Then I come into an office suddenly with some stranger or a group
of strangers,
and I have to go from 98% of my life at bus stop, daily grind to really intimate.
Yeah, I think the reason we want to talk about feelings is because they're one of the things that compel us to take different actions more than anything else, right? Like sometimes we can logic our way into things, but without a feeling, it's not going to compel us necessarily to move into another level of what we're considering. And especially in those extremely positive experiences, but also those more negative or maladaptive things that we do. Like emotion always seems to be the thing that pushes us towards that next step.
So it's hard to have an action or behavior without a preceding emotion.
I have an example.
Please.
So this may or may not be a helpful example, but my sister has been trying to she has one of those sunroofs on her car, and it shattered at one point. And so she's been trying to get it fixed. And so it's been like at least a 6-month ordeal because they'll order the part they need, the shop, and then in the process of fixing it, they break something else, and then they have to order that part. Like, so I've been kind of watching, and I'm watching her kind of deal with this, and every time she has to get a rental car for a short time, and it's just this whole thing, right? And so when you were talking about how we can logic our way through things, like in that situation, logic says, I'm not having a good experience with this auto body place or whatever, so, maybe I'll switch. But the anger she's felt over the way that they've handled this is what motivated her to like call her insurance company and, make a complaint about them. And like after all these things. So that made me think of like her anger and frustration. It wasn't until she got to that point that it was like, now I need to do something about this, right?
So I'm hearing two purposes of emotion so far. One, emotion is the impetus for action. Or behavior, or it's a source of motivation.
Right.
And if we want to understand our behaviors, we can go back to the preceding emotion. Like, what was I thinking? What was I feeling?
Right.
And it's so powerful. Like marketing and advertising is really predicated on
emotions.
Getting our emotions.
Yeah.
Right. And
so true.
I think of how they always have music going, like a car commercials always has music and things going in the background. Why? Because music it really can bypass. It bypasses our mind. It can go right to our emotional center. Yeah. And advertisers, marketers, they know if they get our emotion, they're going to get our action. Yeah. And so two things there. It's motivation, and it's powerful because it leads to our action.
Yep.
Any other purposes of emotion, why we need to be thinking about this, or why we focus on it?
So now I'm glad you said that before about advocating kind of for like the listener, and kind of why share? Because even still, I'm like, okay, if I'm listening to us talk about this, I'm like, okay, emotion motivates us, and it's a big thing. Still, why should I share it? Like, why should I open up and like tell someone else about it?
I think, if you think about, okay, I'm consistently getting angry and hitting people, or I consistently fall in love and I have intense fear and anxiety and I have control issues.
Sure.
Right? These are causing like problemsome behaviors. And so we want to identify the emotion, and then within the emotion, you can often start unpacking, like, how did you learn to express this feeling this way?
Sure.
Right? Like you can start drawing some tethers back. Because I think sometimes just logicking the behavior, like I saw my dad do it, that's why I do it. But you have to recognize, like, I saw my dad do it and that was scary.
Yeah.
And I only learned how to handle problems in this way out of fear and defending myself.
Sure.
Right? It's another level, so you can attend to, hey, this feeling's coming up again, getting into CBT type stuff. I can attend to this now. And
so notice that for people, I think, that are listening, I think you guys both bring up something really important, is that, and especially what you're saying here now, Isaac, that we focus on our behaviors. We're focusing a lot on emotions and a lot on thoughts and cognitions that lead up to the emotion and causes the resulting action. And what I'm hearing is that, okay, let me back up. When we focus on our behaviors that we don't like, these unwanted behaviors, what do? We invalidate ourselves. Why do I do this?
Yes, I did it again.
This
can't
is
believe
so
this.
stupid. Oh man, and we get so upset and we focus, and it's just this little sliver of context. And what I hear you saying is, when we can back up a little bit, understand the emotion, now we're starting to go down a different path, away from self-invalidation to validation. Like, oh, okay, this is starting to make sense.
Yeah.
And then if we can even go back further and understand what were the thoughts that went to this, maybe, as you were saying, what was our family of origin that led up to, now I've got a much broader context to understand. That could be very validating, where I can say, okay, I don't agree with what I'm doing. It makes sense that I'm doing this. And that, I think, is the start of change.
I sometimes use like a metaphor or an analogy, I should say. Like we have to learn our alphabet, and if you grew up learning your alphabet backwards, and that was all you were exposed to, it'd be hard to unlearn it and recognize it as wrong unless you start getting exposed to other examples and seeing like, oh wait, that seems to work better in this world, right? And the same thing happens with our feelings, I think. And so being able to evaluate, like, consistently I have this feeling and it feels askew, and looking at other people and how they're able to operate. And so trying to relearn how we can feel certain things. Like I think people feeling love in particular, like love comes out in all sorts of different complex ways. And we just learn from example and what's given to us also.
So then why talk about my feelings with a bunch of strangers?
Great question.
Right? So one of the things that I'm about to answer my own question. So
Had
there's
a feeling.
yeah, right? What gave me away? Probably because I was smiling and looking excited. So there's something called a corrective emotional experience with group therapy. I mean, with therapy in general, but with group therapy. So a corrective emotional experience. So corrective as in like you're going to correct something and you're going to right a wrong, right? And then emotional experience. So it has to do with what we're talking about, which is sharing your emotions. So I think what I understand to be one of the reasons why you would share your feelings with a group of people that you don't know very well is because ideally when you share an emotion with the group or in front of the group, they're going to respond to it, hopefully, in a way that is different from all the other times in your life that you've experienced. Now, earlier, before we started recording, we were kind of talking about vulnerability, and we were talking about how it can be really hard to even show weakness in front of people, or asking for help, or like, gosh, I'm really stressed about this or scared. So a lot of us, I think, growing up, myself in particular, there were only certain emotions that were okay to show and express, right? And other ones, it was like, you don't go there. And so then I think, like, I'm putting myself in a group, like if I'm thinking of myself being in group therapy, I'm guessing I would try to be kind of the class clown and kind of like keep things light and, and then eventually as I get to know the people better, one of the hardest emotions for me to express for others is anger. And because I'm worried that if I get angry at someone, they're going to get really angry back and it's going to become this really big thing, or they're going to just write me off. So for me, a corrective emotional experience in a group would be if I finally feel safe and to be vulnerable enough to get angry at someone in the group. Now, if you're around a group of people long enough, that's probably going to happen eventually, right? Like, who knows what the topic will be? Who knows, like, what the personalities will be? But someone will make me angry, right? Hopefully at some point. Yeah. And so the idea is I feel safe enough in that group to address it respectfully, hopefully respectfully with that person. But even if I screw it up, right? Like, even if I don't show up perfectly, to have the group and that person be able to, like, talk about it and deal with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
it's a great example. And I think people can really relate to that because we grow up in our family of origin where there are rules, right? They're not written down, they're understood. And a lot of them relate to emotions.
Yes.
Only positive, quote unquote, emotions are allowed. And if you talk about your problems, if you talk about your struggles, then whoa, hey, that's you learn that's not okay, and you're invalidated in various ways. People dismiss you, they minimize you, they try to control you, they just avoid you and walk away.
Right. Yep.
So group then is a validating experience, but it's really hard because you're concerned that I'm going to have this was bad enough with my family of origin, whom I know. I don't know these people. And now they're going to do the same. I know they're going to do the same thing.
Right, right.
But then they don't.
Right.
And it's very validating and healing.
And the correction, so the correction in the corrective emotional experience is people can receive me and who I am and what I'm feeling. And it's like, okay, it's like acceptable. Yeah. And nothing horrible happened. And right?
So, and if that's acceptable, then I'm acceptable.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I think that would be the whole point of, or one of the points of group therapy, right? Is to, and it does, I think, take time. And that's why I think, Isaac, you were saying it's so important to have a consistent group, because as the members get to know one another and trust one another, it starts to become safer to test out those things, right?
Yeah,
So,
which is a work in progress.
Yeah.
I have no idea how long it's going to take.
Yeah. Well, another question I had for you was, so Irvin Yalom is really big about like both in individual and group therapy that the therapist share their present moment experience quite a bit. So like if I'm in therapy with Brett right now, that would be like me saying as the therapist, like, Brett, I'm noticing I find myself just really curious what you're thinking right now. You know, just like, so again, saying right now, here and now, this is what I'm experiencing, thinking, or like, I just noticed a shift in the emotion here. Like, tell me what's going on. Right. So do you do that in group as the group therapist?
I've definitely modeled some. I've shared some of my own experiences when I feel like it can be relevant. And I've also like flat out said, I'm feeling a little anxious, or I'm feeling like we're hitting a hurdle here.
Nice.
You know, and like,
nice.
Yeah, trying to be open about my own struggle in the group and just how awkward and clunky it can be at times to be in a room full of strangers like this. So definitely trying to like model some of that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that's great because a lot of times, especially family of origin or work environments, work cultures, there is that elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about.
Yes.
And so what you're both suggesting is that the leader of the group or even individual therapist will talk about, well, there's a term we use for it called immediacy. Like, okay, before we can keep going any further, we got to talk about something.
Yes.
And so you can do that as a group therapist and say, hey, we got to talk about the elephant in the room here. Yeah. And so
I would say I'm feeling stuck.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah. But it's also predicated on knowing how I feel. And a lot of times we don't know what we're feeling. So any thoughts for people? Because we're trying to build an argument as to why emotions are important in group therapy and therapy in general. So what do we do if people don't understand? I don't know.
Yeah, this is a weird kind of philosophical question.
Yeah.
You know, like what are we seeing red right now? The same red, right? Like, and emotions are in the body, right? So I don't know how to get entirety in the like congruence, like congruence between what everyone is feeling. I think there's like outward things we can assess. You know, someone's grimacing or smiling or tearful, right? But I don't know. It's weird. I went off in my own head.
Well, it's okay.
That's all right. You're a mental health hipster. That's what
right.
you do.
So, you're allowed because we know.
High.
But I think
what is red?
The bigger question is, I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm supposed to talk about my emotions, but what are my emotions? I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is my behavior that is frustrating me and other people around me. So understanding my emotion is going to help with motivation. It's going to cause behavioral change over time. So how do I get in touch with that? How do I know it? How do I articulate it?
Yeah.
You know, someone could ask me, how do you feel? I don't know. I feel like, or I think this, and we still don't know our emotions.
Yeah, I think that's where you just need one of those charts with all the faces on it. That can be a helpful tool, I think, as simple as it is. You know, there's a reason people have it all over the place. It gives you all the words to describe what you're experiencing. You have to have the language to describe it. It's an essential part of it.
You know, it's very simple what you said, yet very, very profound.
Yeah.
I have to have the language to know.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we've never been taught the language, the lingo.
Exactly.
You know, happy, mad, glad, sad, kind of in general where we start.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of build from there. But that's why I think where the therapist and where the group therapist can model that. I think that's what you were saying, Christa, too, is that we're modeling that. You know, I feel this right now. And we're able to model that, people see that, and then or somebody else in group says that, and they're like, that's exactly how I feel. And it's so validating for somebody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So it takes a lot of time to kind of figure this out.
It's a process. Trust the process.
trust the process.
Trust the process.
Yeah, just trust us. It's a lot to ask. And I think we need to, as therapists, a group or individual, we need to constantly be aware that it's a big ask.
It's a big ask.
It's a big ask. And to validate that for people and be patient.
Yeah, I think, coming back to something you said like a few times, like the fact that the therapist is kind of the tool in this environment. Like we don't have stethoscopes or anything, right? So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, but like the equipment is the
It's
therapist,
us.
right?
Yeah. So you really have to be attuned with your own feelings. Like if, thinking of like anger's always been my like dismissive one too. I think
right.
as Minnesotans. So just being aware of where you're actually at. When someone says something to you that's unsettling, taking that as a cue. Not that you need to like shut them down and say this is hurtful to me or what have you, but finding a way to express it healthfully and modeling that it's okay to have uncomfortable feelings and talk about them.
And I think what came to mind for me as we're kind of, I think, closing up now is that we know that the research bears out in therapy. The number one indicator of successful therapy is the relationship between therapist and the person that's coming in for therapy. Mm-hmm. Strength of that relationship and the trust that's there is the number one indicator of if it's going to be successful. And what's happening, whether it's in individual therapy or in group, is people are having that exposure to another person or a group of people that's different, and where they're going to have a different reaction, especially if I share my emotion or I share my thoughts. And that sort of has that recalibrating effect. I can't remember what you used to describe
Corrective emotional experience?
Yes, just rolls off the tongue. Corrective emotional experience.
Yes.
Corrective.
Emotional. A CEE.
CEE, thank you. I was trying to figure that out. Yeah. That's kind of what therapy is. It's a corrective emotional experience. Yeah. And we kept generalize and think, well, this is the way the whole world is, the way my family of origin was. Mm-hmm. And individual therapy, I had a client just yesterday too, saying, I come here and I get a different response from you than I do from my family.
Exactly.
And she said that's really helped me realize I'm not crazy.
Yes.
Like this is real, what's going on for me. Yeah. But then you take that into a broader setting with people in a group who can also validate that just has, exponentially more validating and powerful kind of response. So,
and sometimes they might be invalidating also. The person might react poorly to what you say, but then recognizing someone can disagree with me and I can still be accepted, or like my opinion's still valid, and it doesn't necessarily need to lead to banishment.
Exactly. Because I think that's ultimately the fear, is like ultimate cutoff, abandonment. Like, I make one wrong move and I'm out and I'm cast out of the social group, right?
Yeah. It's so nice then to have a therapist who gets me, who understands me, who can validate me, and I have this corrective emotional experience.
The other one was recapitulate the family dynamic.
Oh, yes. Okay, so
recapitulate.
The textbook, so Irvin, recapitulate the family dynamic.
Yeah. I think it was recalibrate. Did I say capitulate? Maybe I said
no,
that's from
Yalom
the
actually says recapitulate.
Does he really?
Yes, he says recapitulate. I just want to keep saying it.
But it is a textbook, so,
No, well, enough of that textbook talk here. Yeah, let's back to feelings.
Next week on the podcast, we're going to be reading from a textbook.
Singing from textbook, actually.
So speaking of that.
That person could sing the phone book. Well, that person could sing a textbook.
It's funny you say that, because I'll close with this.
Okay, all right.
Okay. I need a corrective emotional experience because this actually ties in. We were talking earlier, like how these two, they are kind of musically inclined, especially Christa, who sings. When I was in grade school, I wanted to sing. I love to sing, so I was chosen to go into the back of the room and sing in echo. It was Wee Willie Winkie. I don't know if you guys know that song. It's powerful.
Not
it's top 10, moving. I'm sure somewhere. But the class would sing Wee Willie Winkie, and then I'd have to say Wee Willie Winkie and sing it in the back.
Echo,
And I was giving it my all. And as I'm doing that, I wonder if I shared this on the podcast. I still need to process it.
Good.
So everybody was laughing because they thought I was like, screwing around,
kidding,
joking around. So everybody thought I was being funny and I was being so serious. And I was so bad that the teacher even was laughing and seriously thought I was joking around.
Oh, poor baby Brett.
It's really hilarious because I just never wanted to ever sing in public ever again.
Well, that would do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I bet you can sing.
We'll get you out on stage.
I don't know if I can sing, but I bet I'm not as bad as I really think. And I think that's a good metaphor for a lot of us growing up in our homes and whatever experiences we have. We need these other exposures and experiences with our emotions and our thoughts to realize I'm not as bad as I really think I am. I'm actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. I'm not perfect, but I'm not awful either.
Exactly.
And if I am bad at singing, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah. It was that day, man. I was holding back tears.
Oh.
I can laugh about it now. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I mean, Bob Dylan did pretty well, and let's be honest, his voice is a little off. Still love him though; it's phenomenal.
Right?
Yeah.
We had to talk about Bob Dylan.
Well, we had to talk about feelings as well, and so we're glad you actually were able to join us today, talking about feelings and understanding better why it's so integral. It's our thoughts evoke feelings; our feelings result in behaviors. And a lot of times that's been painful for us in the past, and we need to have these corrective emotional experiences to learn about the world and to learn about ourselves, is that it's not as bad, as dangerous, nor as unsafe as we might think. So thanks for joining us, Isaac. Great to have you here, our mental health hipster. And stay tuned. Maybe there just might be some bonus material for Christa singing.
We'll see.
Thank you as always for listening, and please be sure to leave us a review. While this podcast can't be a replacement for therapy, we hope you enjoyed our discussion today and join us again next time. Nystrom & Associates is always available to those who are struggling. If you find yourself in need of support and help, please check us out at nystromcounseling.com.